The metal lock clicking shut from outside my own cabin door was the sound that would haunt me forever. Or so I thought. My son's final words still rang in my ears like poison. "This is where you'll die, old woman. No one's coming for you." But Michael had no idea that his 68-year-old mother had been planning this moment for months. What he thought was my imprisonment was actually the beginning of his destruction. I'm Margaret, and this is how I turned the tables on the son who tried to bury me alive. For 42 years I believed I was building something beautiful, a loving family bound by sacrifice and devotion. I started working at 17 in a downtown bakery, my hands rough from kneading dough and my back aching from 12-hour shifts. When my husband abandoned us for his secretary, leaving me alone with 8-year-old Michael, I made a promise that would define the next 4 decades of my life. I would give my son everything I never had. Every dawn brought the same ritual. I'd drag my exhausted body from bed at 4:30, prepare Michael's breakfast, lay out his clothes, and head to work before he even stirred. The bakery was my world: hot ovens, flour dust, and the constant pressure to meet quotas just to earn enough for Michael's needs. I remember the exact moment I knew I'd sacrifice anything for his happiness. It was a rainy Thursday in November when he came home sobbing because the kids at school mocked his second-hand sneakers. That night, as he slept peacefully in his small bed, I counted the $200 I'd saved over 6 months for a desperately needed winter coat. Without hesitation, I spent every penny on brand new athletic shoes that made his face light up like Christmas morning. Watching him walk proudly into school the next day was worth more than any warmth that coat could have provided during the bitter months that followed. This pattern became my existence. When Michael turned 15, I worked double shifts and weekend catering jobs to buy him the bicycle he desperately wanted. At 20, I took out a second mortgage on our modest house to fund his engineering degree at the state university. I never complained, never asked for recognition, never demanded gratitude. I genuinely believed that unconditional love meant giving everything without expecting anything in return, except their natural affection. Michael graduated summa cum laude and landed an excellent position at a prestigious construction firm. Pride swelled in my chest every morning watching him leave in his tailored suits, carrying his leather briefcase like the successful professional I'd shaped him to become. My son is changing the world. I'd tell anyone who'd listen, my voice brimming with maternal satisfaction. Those first few years after graduation felt like validation of every sacrifice I'd made. Our relationship seemed perfect then. He visited regularly, treated me to nice dinners at restaurants I'd only dreamed of affording, and constantly expressed gratitude for the foundation I'd provided. Everything changed the day he introduced me to Christine. The moment I met her, something deep in my gut warned me. Christine was 34, stunning in a calculated way, with platinum blonde hair styled to perfection and a smile that never quite reached her cold blue eyes. She worked as a marketing executive at a high-end pharmaceutical company. From our first interaction, she made it abundantly clear that she viewed Michael's humble background, specifically me, as an embarrassment to be managed. During their early dating period, I tried desperately to connect with her. I spent my meager savings learning to cook elaborate dishes I thought she'd enjoy. I bought thoughtful gifts with money I couldn't spare. I even took cooking classes to prepare sophisticated meals that matched her refined tastes. Every gesture was met with condescending politeness and subtle jabs that Michael either missed or chose to ignore. "Margaret, you really don't need to go to such trouble," Christine would say with that syrupy tone that made my skin crawl. "We're adults now. We can take care of ourselves." But I could see the contempt in her eyes, the judgment of the working-class woman who had raised the man she now considered her prize. Their wedding 2 years later cost more than I'd earned in 5 years. I had dreamed of this moment since Michael was born, imagining myself helping plan every detail, sharing in the joy of my only child's happiest day. Instead, Christine orchestrated everything without consulting me once. When I gently suggested including some family traditions that had meaning for us, she looked at me as if I'd suggested sacrificing animals at the altar. "Margaret dear," she said with that patronizing smile I'd grown to despise, "this is a contemporary celebration. Our guests expect something more sophisticated than old-fashioned customs." Michael, who once would have defended me against any slight, simply nodded and changed the subject. On their wedding day, I sat alone in the front row wearing a discount store dress, feeling invisible while watching my son promise his life to a woman who had already begun erasing me from his world. During the ceremony, when the officiant spoke about honoring parents and family bonds, I caught Christine squeezing Michael's hand with a smile that chilled me to the bone. That evening, while cleaning up after the small family gathering I'd hosted at my house, I overheard a conversation that shattered my heart completely. Christine and her mother were in my backyard, thinking they couldn't be heard. "Now that the wedding's over, we need to establish clear boundaries," Christine was saying in a voice I'd never heard her use in front of me. "Michael is too soft with his mother. She thinks she can still control his life, but those days are finished." "Absolutely right, sweetheart," her mother replied with a cruel laugh. "Men need their wives to open their eyes about these things. A meddling mother-in-law destroys marriages before they even begin." I stood frozen behind the kitchen window, feeling every word like physical blows. The woman I'd tried so hard to love like a daughter was already plotting my exile from my son's life. I finished cleaning in silence, tears streaming down my face, wondering if Michael knew what his new wife truly thought of me. The following months confirmed my worst fears. Michael's visits became sporadic, and when he did come, it was always with Christine and for increasingly brief periods. Our conversations, once flowing naturally for hours, became strained and superficial, constantly interrupted by Christine's subtle but cutting remarks. "Michael, remember we have dinner with my parents tonight," she'd say whenever my son seemed to be enjoying our time together. Or worse, "Honey, your mother looks tired. Maybe we should leave so she can rest," treating me like a feeble invalid instead of a vibrant woman who simply wanted to spend time with her son. The most heartbreaking change was watching Michael transform from the loving, considerate son I'd raised into a distant stranger who seemed ashamed of his modest upbringing, and the mother who had sacrificed everything for him. The first time Michael spoke to me with genuine contempt was on a Sunday afternoon 3 months after his wedding. I had prepared his favorite meal, the same pot roast he'd loved since childhood, and waited anxiously for his weekly visit. When he arrived alone, my heart soared, thinking we'd finally have quality mother-son time. But something in his demeanor was different. He wasn't the affectionate young man who used to embrace me warmly upon arrival. Instead, he greeted me with a cold peck on the cheek and sat at the table like he was fulfilling an unpleasant obligation. "Mom, we need to discuss something," he said as I lovingly served the steaming pot roast onto his favorite plate, the same blue ceramic dish with hand-painted roses I'd bought to celebrate his 16th birthday. "Christine and I have been talking, and we think it would be better if we had more space." His words hit me like ice water. "Space? What does that mean, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the trembling I felt inside. "It means these constant visits are affecting our marriage," he replied without meeting my eyes, focused on cutting his meat as if it required intense concentration. "Christine feels like we don't have enough intimacy as a couple because I'm always coming over here." I sat across from him, my legs suddenly weak. "Michael, you only visit once a week. How could that possibly affect your marriage? I just want to see you and spend time with you. You're all I have in this world." "Exactly. That's the problem," he exploded, dropping his fork with a sharp clatter that made the salt shaker jump. "I'm all you have. Don't you understand how suffocating that is? I'm 32 years old, Mom. I can't keep being responsible for your emotional well-being." His words pierced my heart like daggers. The son I had worked for day and night, the one I had given up any chance of rebuilding my life for after his father abandoned us, was telling me I was a burden on his existence. "I never asked you to be responsible for my happiness," I replied, my voice cracking. "I only asked you to love me as I have loved you. Is that too much to expect?" "Love shouldn't be a prison," he countered, repeating words that clearly weren't his own but Christine's. "You need to understand that I have a new family now, new priorities. I can't keep living to please you." That afternoon, Michael left without finishing the meal I had prepared with such care. I remained alone in my small kitchen, staring at the full plate of food growing cold, feeling as if something inside me had shattered permanently. The following weeks became a silent torture. Michael made good on his threat to space out his visits. What had once been our sacred Sunday appointments became sporadic appearances every 2 or 3 weeks, always with Christine in tow, and always in a rush to leave. During these visits, Christine dominated every conversation, interrupting any moment of intimacy between my son and me with talk about their plans, their trips, their new upper-class social circle. Michael and I are considering buying a larger house, Christine announced during one visit while sipping the coffee I had specially brewed with expensive imported beans that cost me $40. Something in the suburbs, in one of those gated communities where there's better security and a higher caliber of neighbors. The way she emphasized higher caliber of neighbors, while looking directly at me, made it crystal clear that I didn't fit into that category. Michael, who once would have defended his mother from any implicit insult, simply nodded and continued eating the chocolate cake I had baked specifically for him. "What about this house?" I asked, referring to my home where I had raised my son, where all our precious memories together resided. "Well, it's yours, Mom," Michael replied with indifference that cut deep. "You can do whatever you want with it. We won't be needing it anymore." Those words were devastating. The house he had considered home for 3 decades was now just property he wanted to abandon. An uncomfortable reminder of his humble past that no longer fit his new upper-middle-class lifestyle. But the worst was yet to come. When Christine received a promotion at her company, they organized a celebration dinner at their new house, that modern mansion in the exclusive gated community they bragged about constantly. I wasn't invited. I discovered this by accident when I called Michael to ask if he could accompany me to a doctor's appointment. My test results had shown an irregularity, and I was frightened. "I can't, Mom," he said in a cold voice I barely recognized. "Christine is hosting an important dinner with people from her work. It's crucial for her career advancement." "But couldn't you come with me before the dinner?" I pleaded, feeling desperation take hold. "It would only be an hour at the doctor's office. I'm scared to go alone." "Mom, I need to help Christine prepare everything. Can't you ask one of your friends to accompany you?" "What friends?" For so many years I had been so focused on him, on his education, on his well-being, that I had neglected my own social relationships. Most women my age were busy with their grandchildren, their husbands, with lives they had built in a more balanced way than I had. I hung up the phone and sat in my living room for hours, staring at the photographs of Michael that covered every wall. There he was at 6 years old in his first school uniform that I had so carefully washed and pressed every day. There he was at 13, proudly holding the medal he had won in the science fair, the same competition for which I had paid for extra tutoring by working weekends. There he was at 19, graduating from high school with honors, the day I thought all my sacrifices had been worthwhile. The next day I went to the doctor alone. The results were benign, thank God. But the experience of sitting in that waiting room completely isolated, surrounded by other women accompanied by their sons or husbands, made me feel the deepest loneliness of my entire existence. When I called Michael to share the good news, his response was a brief, "That's good, Mom," before he quickly changed the subject to tell me how successful Christine's dinner had been and how they had impressed all their important guests. It was then that I began to understand that I had lost my son forever. He hadn't died, but the loving, grateful man I had raised no longer existed. In his place was an ambitious stranger who was ashamed of his roots, and who had chosen a woman who systematically pushed him away from the mother who had given everything for him. The months passed and visits became even more infrequent. Michael only appeared when he needed something. For me to store important documents for him, to prepare a specific dish to impress Christine's colleagues, or to borrow money for some unexpected expense that their new lifestyle demanded. "Mom, could you lend me $8,000? He asked during one of his rare visits. "It's for the down payment on a new car. Christine's broke down and she needs something more elegant for her position." $8,000 represented almost all my savings, the money I had accumulated penny by penny over years in case I ever faced a medical emergency or major house repair. But as always, I couldn't deny my son anything. "Of course, sweetheart," I replied, feeling my heart contract. "When do you need it?" "Tomorrow would be perfect." he said with a smile that momentarily reminded me of the sweet boy he used to be. I promise I'll pay you back within 4 months. That promise was never kept. Every time I mentioned the loan, Michael had a new excuse. Unexpected expenses from their new house, a business trip that Christine needed to take, or car repairs that had ended up costing more than anticipated. The day I hit rock bottom was on a gray Tuesday in December. Exactly 10 months after the loan he never repaid. I had been battling a severe flu for over a week, high fever, and a cough that tore through my chest. My 68-year-old body no longer responded as it once had, and for the first time in decades, I felt truly vulnerable and frightened. I called Michael, hoping he could either accompany me to the doctor, or at least spend some time with me to ensure I was okay. His response froze my blood. "I can't come, Mom. Christine and I have a crucial appointment with the architect to remodel our kitchen. It took us months to secure an appointment with him. He's the most sought-after architect in the city. Michael, please," I begged, my voice hoarse with fever. "I just need someone to be with me for a few hours. I feel terrible and I'm afraid I might faint. Can't you call a neighbor or something?" He replied with irritation that cut through me like a blade. "Christine says that independent adults need to learn how to take care of themselves without constantly depending on others." Christine says those 2 words had become the most painful phrase in my vocabulary. Everything my son thought, decided, or felt now passed through the filter of that woman who had managed to transform my loving boy into a cruel stranger. "I'm your mother, Michael," I said, feeling tears mix with the fever. "Since when am I others to you?" "Oh, Mom, don't be so dramatic. It's just the flu. Have some tea and rest. You'll feel better soon." He hung up without even saying goodbye. I held the phone for several minutes, feeling something inside me die forever. The son for whom I had sacrificed my youth, my money, my dreams, my chances at love, had reduced me to an inconvenience that interfered with his important appointments. That night, as I lay in bed trembling with fever and feeling more alone than ever, I made a decision that would change everything forever. I couldn't continue being the begging mother, the woman who pleaded for scraps of attention and affection from a son who clearly despised me. I had to find a way to reclaim my dignity, even if it meant losing my relationship with Michael forever. My recovery from the flu took 3 full weeks. During that entire time, my phone remained silent. Michael never called once to ask how I was feeling, if I needed anything, or if I was even alive. It was my neighbor Dorothy, a 72-year-old widow who lived next door, who took care of me. She brought medicine, prepared warm soups, and sat by my side during the most difficult nights. "Margaret," Dorothy told me one afternoon while helping me change the fever-soaked sheets, "it's not normal for a son to abandon his sick mother like this. Something is very wrong here." She was right, but admitting it meant facing a truth I had been avoiding for months. My son had become a heartless person, and I had been complicit in that transformation by allowing him to treat me worse and worse without establishing any boundaries. When I finally recovered, I decided it was time to take action. If Michael wanted to treat me like a stranger, then so be it. I would no longer be the suffocating mother he described. I would no longer be available whenever he needed something. I would no longer be his personal bank or his emergency chef. The first test came 3 weeks later when Michael called as if nothing had happened. "Mom, could you make that lasagna Christine loves so much? Her parents are visiting for dinner, and she wants to impress them with some homemade food." For the first time in 32 years, I said no. "I'm sorry, Michael, but I can't. I have other commitments." The silence on the other end of the line was so prolonged, I thought the call had disconnected. "Other commitments?" he repeated in a tone of disbelief that would have been comical if it wasn't so pathetic. "What kind of commitments could you possibly have?" "My own," I replied with a firmness that surprised even me. "I'm no longer available whenever you need me, especially after you didn't care whether I was dead or alive during my illness." "What are you talking about? It was just the flu. A flu that could have killed me, and you didn't even call to check on me," I countered. "Christine said it was better to give you space, so you could recover without feeling pressured." He lied shamelessly. "Christine says, Christine thinks, Christine believes." I finally exploded. When are you going to start thinking for yourself, Michael? When are you going to remember that you have a mother who loves you? Don't start with your emotional blackmail, he shouted back. If you don't want to help me with a simple meal, fine. But don't try to manipulate me. He hung up violently, leaving me trembling. But for the first time in months, I felt something close to relief. The following days were strange. On one hand, I felt guilty for having denied my son something, but on the other, I was experiencing a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. I didn't have to wait by the phone for his sporadic calls. I didn't have to emotionally prepare myself for his cold and calculating visits. For the first time in a long time, my house was truly mine. I used this freedom to reconnect with Dorothy and other neighbors I had neglected during the years I obsessed over Michael. I started taking afternoon walks, tending to my small garden, and reading the books I had accumulated but never had time to enjoy. Slowly, very slowly, I began to remember who I was before I became solely Michael's mother. But my son wasn't prepared to accept this new version of me. For weeks after our phone argument, he showed up at my door unannounced, accompanied by Christine and wearing an expression of fury I hadn't seen since his teenage years. "We need to talk," he said, walking into my living room without waiting for an invitation. Christine followed, wearing a designer purple dress that probably cost more than my monthly bakery pension. "Of course, make yourselves comfortable," I said sarcastically, but I decided to remain calm. "How can I help you?" "You can start by explaining what's been happening with you lately," Michael said, sitting in the armchair where he used to curl up as a child for bedtime stories. "First you hang up on me, then you refuse to help with a simple meal, and now the neighbors are saying you're spreading gossip about us." "Spreading gossip about you?" I asked, genuinely confused. "What did I supposedly say?" "Dorothy told her sister, and her sister told the woman at the grocery store that you said I was an ungrateful son who abandoned his sick mother," Christine interjected with a voice that feigned concern but dripped with venom. "Do you realize the damage that can do to Michael's reputation at work?" My mouth fell open. It was true that I had confided in Dorothy about my disappointment with Michael, but I never thought my words would travel so far or that my son would be more worried about his reputation than about understanding my feelings. "Your reputation?" I asked Michael directly, completely ignoring Christine. "That's your biggest concern, isn't it? Not the fact that your mother felt abandoned when she needed you most." "Oh, please," Christine burst out before Michael could respond. "Margaret, you're 68 years old. It's time you grew up and stopped acting like a spoiled teenager seeking attention." The silence that followed those words was deafening. I looked at my son, expecting him to finally stand up and defend the woman who had raised him. I expected him to tell his wife that she had no right to disrespect me in my own home, that he would remember everything I had sacrificed for him. But Michael just remained quiet, staring at his shoes like a scolded child. Michael's silence was more painful than any insult Christine could have hurled at me. In that moment, seeing my 32-year-old son sitting there like a coward while his wife attacked me in my own home, I understood that I had definitely lost the boy I had raised with so much love. "I see you have nothing to say," I said directly to Michael, feeling rage begin to replace the sadness I had carried for months. "I see you're going to let me be disrespected in my own house without lifting a finger to defend me." He finally looked up, but in his eyes there was no guilt or remorse, only annoyance. "Mom, Christine isn't disrespecting you. She's just telling you the truth you need to hear. You can't keep living as if you're the victim of everything." "The victim?" I stood up, feeling all the frustration accumulated over the years begin to boil in my veins. "I'm the victim for expecting basic respect from my own son? For wanting you to care whether I was dead or alive when I had a 104-degree fever? It was just the flu," he also shouted, standing up. "You couldn't expect me to cancel my entire life for a simple flu. It wasn't a simple flu. It was your sick and frightened mother asking her only son to accompany her to the doctor." I screamed back, feeling tears of rage begin to roll down my cheeks. "It was the woman who worked double shifts to pay for your college, who mortgaged her house to give you a career, who gave up every chance to be happy so you could have everything you wanted. No one asked you to do that." His response hit me like a punch to the stomach. No one asked you to sacrifice your life for me. Those were your decisions. For a moment, the world stopped around me. My own son, the man I had given everything for, was telling me that my sacrifices had not only been unnecessary but unwanted. That everything I had done out of love had been a gigantic mistake that he now resented. "You're right," I said with a voice I didn't recognize as my own, cold and calm despite the storm raging inside me. "No one asked me to sacrifice my life for you. They were my decisions, foolish decisions by a woman who believed that a mother's love meant giving everything without expecting anything in return." Christine smiled with satisfaction, clearly enjoying the spectacle of seeing me destroyed by my own son's words. "I'm glad you finally understand," Michael continued, cruelly encouraged by what he interpreted as my surrender. "Now maybe you can start living your own life instead of trying to control mine." "Oh, I'm going to live my own life," I assured him, feeling a strange calm come over me. "In fact, I'm going to start right now." I walked over to the small desk where I kept my important documents and pulled out the paper I had been avoiding looking at for months. The will I had written years ago, in which Michael was the sole beneficiary of everything I owned. "You know what, son?" I said, holding the document in front of him. "You're right. My sacrifices were my decisions. Decisions I now deeply regret. But this house, these savings, this inheritance you were going to receive, these are also my decisions." Michael's eyes fixed on the paper with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. "What are you doing?" "I'm making a new decision," I replied, walking toward the paper shredder I had recently purchased to dispose of old documents. "I'm deciding that I no longer want a son who despises me to inherit anything from the foolish woman who sacrificed everything for him." "Mom, wait!" he yelled, lunging toward me as I slowly fed the will into the machine. But it was too late. The document disintegrated into thin strips that fell into the bin like confetti of my liberation. "What did you just do?" Christine asked, her voice suddenly high-pitched with genuine concern. Until that moment, she had just been the cruel wife enjoying the family drama. But now she realized she had just lost a considerable inheritance. "I just did what my son asked," I replied with a smile that came from my soul. "I stopped making decisions based on love that is clearly unrequited." Michael was pale, staring at the remnants of the will as if he couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. "Mom, you can't. You can't do that. This house, your savings. I'm your only son." "Exactly," I said, feeling a strength I didn't know I possessed. "You're my only son. And you just told me that all my sacrifices for you were mistakes that no one asked for. So now I'm going to correct those mistakes." "Are you insane?" Christine shrieked, completely losing her composure. "You can't disinherit your own son just because you had an argument." "An argument?" I looked at her with a calm that surprised me. "Christine, dear, this isn't an argument. This is the result of months of humiliation, contempt, and abandonment. And this is what happens when you treat someone like trash for so long that they finally decide they deserve better." "Mom, please," Michael pleaded, reaching toward me with outstretched hands as if I were a wild animal that needed calming. "You're acting impulsively. You're angry and not thinking clearly." "On the contrary," I replied, stepping away from him. "For the first time in years, I'm thinking with perfect clarity. I'm realizing that raising an ungrateful son was my biggest mistake, but it doesn't have to be permanent." "You can't talk to your mother like that," Christine yelled at Michael, but no longer from moral superiority, from panic at seeing a fortune disappear before her eyes. "Tell her something. Fix this." The irony was delicious. The same woman who had spent years poisoning my son against me, who had encouraged his every cruelty, was now demanding that he treat me well because her financial future was at stake. "How interesting," I said, observing the growing desperation on both their faces. "For months, Christine, you've been telling my son that I was a toxic, controlling mother who needed to learn independence. And now that I'm finally following your advice, you realize maybe it wasn't such a good idea after all." "Margaret, I never said those things," she lied shamelessly. But her trembling voice betrayed her. "Of course you did. And my son, instead of defending me, chose to believe every one of your poisonous words. He chose to treat me like a nuisance instead of the woman who gave him life and paid for the education he now uses to earn the money you both love spending. Michael sank back into the armchair with his head in his hands. For a moment, just a moment, I saw a flicker of the vulnerable boy he used to be, and my heart almost broke. Almost. "Mom," he said in a small voice, "I know I've been difficult lately. I know I might not have been the son you expected, but you can't punish me like this. We're family." Family. I repeated the word as if hearing it for the first time. "Do you know what that word means, Michael? It means being there when the other person needs you. It means mutual respect. It means not allowing anyone, not even your wife, to humiliate the person who gave you life." I can change," he mumbled, but his words sounded hollow even to himself. "No," I responded with firmness that surprised him. "I'm no longer interested in whether you can change. I'm no longer interested in being the mother who begs for scraps of affection from a son who clearly despises me. I've decided I deserve better." "But we're your only family," Christine shrieked, now playing the emotional blackmail card she had so often criticized me for using. I smiled at her with sweetness that contrasted brutally with my words. "You were my family. Now you are two strangers who came to my house to disrespect me and demand an inheritance you're no longer going to receive. You can't do this," Christine screamed, completely losing the mask of sophistication she had always worn around me. "That house is worth more than $200,000. Your savings are our future." I heard her speak of our future, as if my money, the money I had earned kneading dough for 40 years, was something that belonged to them by divine right. The woman who had treated me like an ignorant peasant for years was now claiming my inheritance with the desperation of someone whose life plan had just vanished. "Interesting," I said, crossing my arms. "So now my savings are your future. The same woman who told me I was a dramatic old woman who needed to grow up is here demanding that dramatic old woman's money." Michael stood up abruptly with an expression I had never seen on his face before. It was a mixture of panic, rage, and something that looked dangerously like a threat. "Mom, you're going to reverse this right now," he said in a low, controlled voice that reminded me of his father at his worst. "You're going to call your lawyer and make a new will naming me as your sole heir." "Or what?" I asked, feeling strange calm in the face of his threatening attitude. "What are you going to do if I don't, Michael? Or you're going to discover what it really means to be alone," he replied, approaching me with slow, deliberate steps. "Do you think anyone will take care of you when you're a frail old woman? Do you think you'll be able to maintain this house when you're 80 and can barely walk?" His words were like daggers, but they no longer hurt as they once did. The woman who had endured months of humiliation had died in the last 30 minutes. In her place, someone stronger had been born. Someone who finally understood her own worth. "I'd rather die alone in a nursing home than continue living as the emotional slave of a son who despises me," I responded with serenity that baffled him. "I'd rather have strangers inherit my money than give it to someone who treats me like garbage." "You're insane," Christine screamed again. "Completely insane. Michael, do something. Your mother has lost her mind." "I haven't lost my mind," I replied, walking toward the front door. "I found it. And now I'm kindly asking you both to leave my house." "We're not leaving until you fix this madness," Michael declared, planting himself in the middle of the living room as if he owned it. "Then I'll have to call the police to explain trespassing laws," I replied, heading for the phone. "Don't you dare!" he yelled, snatching the receiver from my hand with violence that frightened me. For the first time in this confrontation, I felt real fear. The man standing before me was no longer my son. He was a desperate stranger, capable of anything to protect what he considered his. And in that moment, I knew I was in genuine danger. "Give me that phone back," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Not until you come to your senses," he replied, holding the device beyond my reach. "You're going to sit down, calm down, and we're going to discuss this like civilized adults." "Civilized adults?" I laughed, feeling hysteria bordering on madness. "You're going to teach me about civilization? You, the man who just snatched the phone from his 68-year-old mother. It's for your own good," he yelled. And in that moment, I saw Christine's complete influence over him. Those were words she had used with me many times, always justifying her cruelties as acts of tough love. For my own good, I repeated, feeling the last fiber of maternal love snap permanently in my chest. For 30 years, everything you've done to hurt me has been for my own good. Marrying a woman who hates me was for my own good. Abandoning me when I was sick was for my own good. Humiliating me in my own home is for my own good. Christine approached with that fake smile I knew so well. Margaret, I know you're hurt, but you have to understand that Michael only wants what's best for you. We all want what's best for you. All of us. I looked at her with incredulity that was almost comical. You want what's best for me? You, the woman who spent 2 years poisoning my son against me. Who told me I was a dramatic old lady who needed to grow up. That was just frustration in the moment, she lied pathetically. You know we appreciate you very much. You appreciate me? I repeated her words as if they were a particularly funny joke. You appreciate me so much that my son didn't speak to me for 3 weeks when I was sick. You appreciate me so much that you come to my house to demand I reverse a decision about my own money. Michael moved closer, still holding the phone out of my reach. Mom, listen to me. You are going to make a new will. You are going to leave me this house and your savings, and we are going to forget this ridiculous conversation. Or what? I asked again, but this time with a smile that visibly disturbed him. Or you're going to discover what it means to be completely alone, he threatened. Without a son, without money, without anyone who cares about you. Michael, I said, moving toward him until our faces were inches apart. I'm already completely alone. I already know what it's like to have a son who doesn't care about me. The difference is that now I've finally decided to do something about it. Something in my tone must have alarmed him because for the first time since this confrontation began, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. What do you mean by that? I mean you two are leaving my house right now and never coming back. I mean I'm changing the locks tomorrow. I mean I'm making a new will where all my money goes to charities that help single mothers, so no other woman makes the mistake of sacrificing everything for an ungrateful son. You can't do that. They both yelled in unison like a chorus of greed and desperation. I can and I will, I assured them. And if you ever bother me again, I'm calling the police and telling them exactly what kind of people you are. How you treated an elderly woman, how you threatened her in her own home, how you took her phone when she tried to call for help. Michael stared at me for a long moment, and for an instant I thought he might finally react like the son I had raised. I thought he might give me back the phone, apologize, remember who I was to him. Instead, he hurled the phone against the wall with such force that it shattered, filling my living room with broken plastic and crushed wires. There's your phone, he said with a cruel smile that chilled my blood. Let's see how you call the police now. The silence that followed was absolute. The three of us stood staring at the phone remnants scattered across the floor, as if it were a perfect metaphor for what remained of our family relationship. Michael, I said in a voice that sounded strangely calm even to myself, you just crossed a line you can never come back from. Is that so? He challenged, puffing out his chest like a street thug. And what are you going to do about it, Mom? You don't have a phone anymore. You don't have anyone to help you. You're completely at our mercy. Christine smiled with satisfaction, clearly enjoying the spectacle of seeing me finally subdued and humiliated as she had planned for so long. What neither of them knew was that they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. I kept staring at the phone fragments for several seconds, feeling something fundamental change inside me. It was no longer fear or sadness or even rage I felt. It was something much more dangerous, absolute calm, the serenity of someone who has finally seen the true nature of the people in front of them. You know what, Michael? I said, bending down to pick up one of the largest pieces of destroyed phone. You're right. I don't have a phone anymore. I don't have anyone to help me. I am completely at your mercy. His smile widened, interpreting my words as surrender. I'm glad you finally understand the situation. Oh, I understand it perfectly, I continued, holding the broken plastic fragment as if it were a precious relic. I understand that my own son just destroyed my only way of communicating with the outside world. I understand that he threatened me in my own home. I understand that his wife is here enjoying every second of my humiliation. Christine moved closer with that expression of triumph she had waited so long to show me. Now maybe you can be reasonable, Margaret. Making that new will is the only intelligent thing you can do. You're absolutely right, I replied, dropping the phone piece. That's exactly what I'm going to do. They exchanged a look of absolute satisfaction, believing they had finally broken me. They had no idea that what had just broken wasn't my will, but the last chains that bound me to them out of love. Perfect, Michael said, relaxing his shoulders. I knew you'd come to your senses. We'll go to the lawyer tomorrow morning and get this all straightened out. Tomorrow, I repeated, nodding slowly. Of course tomorrow. And in the meantime, Christine added with that poisonous smile, you should reflect on how you've been behaving lately. A little humility would do you good. Humility? I murmured. Yes, I definitely need more humility. Michael headed for the door, clearly satisfied with the outcome of his intimidation. We're leaving now, but we'll come for you first thing tomorrow morning, and you better be ready to cooperate. Of course, I assured them, following them to the exit. I'll be completely ready. Christine stopped at the threshold and looked at me with the condescension she had perfected. Margaret, I know this has been hard for you, but someday you'll thank us for opening your eyes. Sometimes tough love is the only thing that works. Tough love, I repeated her words. Yes, I definitely need to learn more about tough love. They left without saying goodbye, leaving me alone in my house with the remains of my phone, and something much more important, absolute clarity about who the people who had just walked out my door really were. I waited until I heard their car driving away before I moved. Then, with a calm that surprised me, I went to my bedroom and pulled out the cell phone I had secretly bought 4 months earlier from under the mattress. After realizing I needed a communication method that Michael didn't know about, I dialed Dorothy's number. Dorothy, it's Margaret. Could you come over? I need your help with something urgent. 30 minutes later, Dorothy was sitting in my living room staring at the phone remnants with absolute horror. Margaret, this is very serious. Your own son threatened you and destroyed your phone. We have to call the police. No, I said, serving her tea with perfectly steady hands. Not yet. What do you mean, not yet? This is domestic violence. It's intimidation. You can't let them treat you like this. I won't let them, I assured her. But I'm going to handle it my way. Dorothy studied me with those wise eyes, trying to understand what I was thinking. What do you have in mind? They think they've broken me, I explained, feeling a strange smile form on my lips. They think tomorrow I'm going to go like an obedient sheep and make a new will, leaving them all my money. And you're not going to? Oh yes, I am, I said, and my smile widened. But it won't be the will they expect. I explained my plan to Dorothy, who initially tried to dissuade me, insisting it was too risky. But when I told her all the details of how they had treated me over the past months, when she saw the phone remnants and truly understood what had happened that afternoon, her expression completely changed. Are you sure you want to do this? She finally asked. I've never been more certain of anything in my life, I replied. For 30 years, I've allowed myself to be mistreated out of fear of losing my son's love. But today I realized that love was lost long ago. What's left isn't love, it's habit, convenience, and greed. Dorothy nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? I need you to be my witness, I said. I need you to see exactly how they behave toward me so that when this is all over, you can testify about what really happened. That night I couldn't sleep. But it wasn't from fear or anxiety. It was from the strange sense of freedom I was experiencing. For the first time in decades, I was going to take complete control of my life. I was going to prove to Michael and Christine that they had completely underestimated the woman they thought they had domesticated. At 6 in the morning, I called the lawyer who had drawn up my original will. I explained that I needed to make urgent changes and asked him to come to my house that morning before Michael and Christine arrived. Are you certain about these changes, Mrs. Margaret? The lawyer asked after reviewing the new instructions. They're quite drastic. Completely certain. I confirmed, signing each page with determination I hadn't felt in years. And I want it absolutely clear that I'm making these decisions in full possession of my mental faculties, without any coercion. Understood. The documents will be filed immediately. At 10 o'clock in the morning, exactly as they had promised, I heard Michael's car pull up in front of my house. Dorothy was hiding in the kitchen where she could hear everything happening in the living room. My cell phone was recording, hidden among the couch cushions. I opened the door before they could knock, with a perfectly acted expression of resignation. "Good morning," I said in a submissive voice. "I was expecting you." Michael entered with the arrogance of a conqueror he had shown the night before. "Perfect. I see a night of reflection did you good." "Yes," I murmured, keeping my gaze low. I understood everything perfectly. Christine studied me suspiciously, as if sensing something wasn't quite right, but the performance of a defeated woman I was putting on seemed to convince her. "Did you call the lawyer?" Michael asked. "He already came," I informed them. "The new will is already done." They exchanged a look of absolute triumph. They had won, or so they thought. "Excellent," Christine said, sitting on my sofa as if she owned the house. "And what exactly does it say?" I showed them a copy of the document, watching their eyes light up as they read the first lines. What they didn't know was that what they held was a fake copy prepared specifically for this moment. "Perfect," Michael murmured, reading about his complete inheritance. "I knew you would come to your senses." "Yes," I said, feeling adrenaline begin to rush through my veins. "I came to my senses completely." "Now that this is settled," Christine said, putting the fake will in her purse like a trophy, "we need to discuss some other practical matters." "What kind of matters?" I asked, perfectly maintaining my act as a submissive, defeated woman. "Well," Michael chimed in, making himself comfortable in the armchair as if he were the new owner. "Now that we know this property will eventually be ours, Christine and I have been thinking that maybe it would be better if you moved to a place more appropriate for your age." "Appropriate for my age?" I repeated, feeling rage begin to boil but keeping my voice calm. "Yes, Mom. A place where you can receive proper care. A senior living facility with medical staff available 24/7. Christine nodded enthusiastically. "We've been researching some excellent options, places where you can socialize with people your own age, where you won't have to worry about maintaining this big house." "I see," I murmured, clenching my fists behind my back. "And when would I have to make this transition?" "Well," Michael said, exchanging another knowing look with his wife, "we were thinking the sooner the better. This house needs major renovations if we're going to sell it for its real value." "Sell it?" I looked at them with feigned confusion. "But I thought you wanted it for yourselves." "Oh no," Christine replied with a laugh that made my teeth grind. "This house is too old, too small for our needs. But the lot is excellent, very well located. With the right renovations, or better yet, by demolishing it and building something modern, we could get almost $500,000. There it was, the complete, ruthless truth. Not only did they want to evict me from my own house, but they planned to erase every trace of the life I had built there. Every memory of the years I had spent raising my son within these walls. $500,000, I repeated slowly. "That's substantial money." "Exactly," Michael confirmed. "And with your savings, which according to the will amount to $75,000, we'd be talking about over $500,000. Enough for Christine and me to buy the house of our dreams in the best neighborhood in the city." "The house of your dreams," I murmured, feeling every word like a slap. "And where do I fit into these dreams?" "You'll be perfectly cared for at the facility," Christine assured me with the condescension she had perfected. "You'll have everything you need: food, shelter, medical attention. What more could a woman your age ask for?" What more could I ask for? Perhaps respect, gratitude, for the son I sacrificed my entire life for, not to treat me like old furniture to be discarded. "And when would all this be ready?" I asked, still maintaining my act. "Actually," Michael said, looking at his wife as if asking permission to continue, "we've already made some calls. There's an excellent facility on the outskirts of town with immediate availability. We could take you tomorrow morning to look at it." Tomorrow. The speed with which they had organized my exile took my breath away. Isn't that rather rushed? Mom, Michael said with forced patience used with difficult children, the longer we wait, the harder it will be for you to adapt. It's better to make the change quickly, like ripping off a bandage. Like ripping off a bandage. That was the metaphor my son had chosen to describe uprooting me from my home, my memories, everything that had been my world for 4 decades. Besides, Christine added, we've already contacted contractors to come appraise the property. One can come next week, but we need the house available. Available, I repeated to myself. Exactly, she confirmed with a smile she didn't try to hide. I remained silent for several minutes, pretending to process all the information they had given me. In reality, I was savoring every second of this conversation, recording every cruel word, every ruthless plan, every display of the greed and contempt they had been hiding behind masks of filial concern. You know what? I finally said, getting up from the couch with deliberately slow movements. I think you're right. I think it's time I accepted the reality of my situation. They both visibly relaxed, interpreting my words as the total surrender they had been seeking. I'm glad to hear you say that, Michael said, also standing. I know it's difficult, but you'll be happier this way. Happier? I nodded. Yes, I'll definitely be happier. So tomorrow we'll go see the facility? Christine asked, already taking out her phone to make arrangements. Tomorrow, I confirmed. But first, there's something I need to show you. Something important I found while organizing my things for the move. What is it? Michael asked with sudden interest. It's in the basement, I explained, heading for the door leading to the stairs. Something that belonged to your grandfather. Something I thought you might like as a family keepsake. Curiosity overcame any caution they might have had. Both followed me into the basement, descending the wooden stairs that creaked under our feet. My basement was a place Michael had avoided for years. As a child, he had irrational fears of closed, dark spaces, and as an adult, he simply had no reason to go down there. What he didn't know was that I had transformed that space into my private sanctuary, the place where I kept my most precious memories and some other items I had been collecting for years. It's a bit dark, I told them, turning on the stair light but leaving the rest of the basement in shadows. Be careful where you step. We reached the bottom and I flipped on the main light. The basement illuminated, revealing what I had been preparing for months without their knowledge. What is all this? Christine asked, looking around with a mixture of confusion and alarm. The walls were covered with photographs, documents, and newspaper clippings, but they weren't normal family keepsakes. They were evidence. Photos of bruises I had gotten during times Michael had pushed me during arguments. Copies of bank statements showing all the loans he had never repaid. Recordings of conversations where he and Christine talked about me disrespectfully, thinking I couldn't hear. This is my archive, I explained with calmness that contrasted brutally with the growing panic on their faces. Everything you've done, everything you've said, everything you've planned, it's all here. Michael approached one of the walls, reading documents with a paleness that gave me immense satisfaction. Mom, what is this? Why? Why did I document everything? I finished his question. Because I knew that eventually I would need proof of who you two really are. Christine had found transcripts of some of their cruelest phone conversations. Conversations I had secretly recorded over recent months. This is illegal, she shrieked, holding the papers with trembling hands. You can't record private conversations. Actually, I can, I informed her. In my own home, I have the right to record any conversation. And considering I was documenting emotional and financial abuse, any court would consider it completely justified. The silence in the basement was deafening. Michael and Christine moved between the walls covered in evidence like zombies, reading transcripts of conversations where they had planned my future without consulting me, seeing photographs documenting every humiliation, every moment of contempt they had made me endure. This section here, I said, pointing to a particular area, is every time you borrowed money from me and never paid back a single cent. In total, you owe me $63,000. Michael approached the documents, his face growing paler. Mom, those weren't loans. They were family assistance. Family assistance? I laughed with bitterness from my soul. Is that what you call theft now? Because right here I have recordings of you promising to pay me back every cent. Christine had found the most damning photographs, images of her going through my drawers without permission during visits, documents proving she had been researching the value of my property without my knowledge, even screenshots of text messages mocking me to her friends. How did you get all this? She asked, her voice trembling with pure rage. Your mistake, dear Christine, was completely underestimating the dramatic old lady you thought you had domesticated, I replied. It turns out this old lady learned to use security cameras, recording apps, and many other modern tools during the months you thought I was losing my mind. In the center of the basement was a table with something neither had noticed until now, an open laptop with an active video call. What is that? Michael asked, walking toward the screen. Oh, that, I said with a smile from my heart, is my life insurance. For the last 30 minutes, everything we've set up here and down here has been live streamed to several very important people. The screen showed multiple video windows, a lawyer specializing in elder abuse, a social worker, and from my kitchen to my ultimate satisfaction, Mark, my neighbor who worked as an investigative journalist for the local newspaper. Margaret, the lawyer exclaimed from the screen, are you okay? Do we need to call the police? I'm perfectly fine, I replied without taking my eyes off the faces of absolute horror on Michael and Christine. In fact, I've never felt better. Turn that off, Christine screamed, lunging for the computer. But I was faster and closed it before she could reach it. Too late, I informed her. Everything is already recorded and saved in multiple locations. Your plans to put me in a facility, your comments about demolishing my house, your confession about the $500,000 you expect to make from my property, all of it. Michael collapsed into an old chair in the basement, his head in his hands. Mom, what have you done? What I should have done months ago, I replied. Protected myself from you too. You can't use any of this, Christine screamed, waving the paper she had been reading. It's private conversations. It's invasion of privacy. Honey, I said with infinite patience, documenting abuse isn't invasion of privacy. It's survival. I walked toward another section of the wall where something hung that filled them with even greater terror, copies of recent legal documents. These here are particularly interesting, I continued. They're the lawsuits I'm filing next week. One for elder financial abuse, another for intimidation and threats, and this last one for property damage for the phone you destroyed yesterday. Are you crazy? Michael yelled, standing up abruptly. I'm your son. You can't sue your own son. My son. I looked at him with coldness that made him recoil. My son died months ago, Michael. The person standing in front of me is a stranger who threatens me, destroys my things, who plans to steal my inheritance and put me in a home against my will. Tears began rolling down my cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of liberation, of justice, of satisfaction I had waited too long to feel. But that's not all, I continued, walking toward the most important document of all. This one here is my favorite. I showed them a copy of the Real will, the one I had signed that morning with the lawyer. Remember the will I showed you upstairs? It was fake. This is the real one. Michael snatched the document from my hands, reading it with desperation that gave me more pleasure than I had felt in years. This can't be, he mumbled, reading line by line. You can't have done this. What does it say? Christine asked, trying to read over her husband's shoulder. It says, I informed her with a radiant smile, that all my property and savings will go to a foundation for single mothers fighting to get education for their children. It says that not a single cent will go to people who treat the elderly like garbage. Christine went completely pale. You can't do that. We're your family. My family. I laughed until my ribs hurt. My family doesn't threaten me. My family doesn't plan to put me in a facility so they can sell my house. My family doesn't destroy my things when they don't get what they want. Mom, please, Michael pleaded, and for the first time in months, I saw something resembling the son I had raised. I know we've been difficult with you, but I didn't know you felt this way. You didn't know? I snatched the will from his hands. You didn't know when you hung up on me while I had fever? You didn't know when you allowed your wife to insult me in my own house? You didn't know when you threatened to leave me completely alone if I didn't do what you wanted. I was just frustrated, he stammered. I didn't mean those things. But you said them and you meant them, I replied. And for months you treated me as if I were a nuisance you had to tolerate until you could finally get rid of me. Christine had started crying, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of pure rage and frustration at seeing her perfect plan crumble. This isn't over, she shrieked. We're going to contest that will. We're going to prove you're not of sound mind. Go ahead, I told her, moving closer until we were face to face. Try to prove I'm not of sound mind. Try to explain to a judge why a woman who meticulously documented months of abuse and neglect doesn't have the right to decide what to do with her own money. The silence that followed was absolute. They both finally understood that they had lost, that their greed and cruelty had been their undoing. Besides, I added, heading toward the stairs, you forgot that all this is going to be published in the newspaper next week. Mark already has all the material he needs to write a very interesting article about elder abuse in middle-class families. Your names, your photographs, your own words describing your plans for me. You can't do that, Michael yelled, following me toward the stairs. That will ruin my career. You should have thought about that before threatening your mother, I replied without turning to look at him. We reached the main floor where Dorothy was waiting with absolute satisfaction on her face. How did it go? She asked, though the devastated expressions of Michael and Christine had already given her the answer. Perfectly, I replied. I think our guests are ready to leave now. The legal process that followed was exactly as devastating as I had expected. The local newspapers covered the story extensively, especially after Mark published his investigative article titled, "The Price of Ingratitude: When Children Become Predators." Michael's company fired him after the scandal reached his supervisors. Christine lost her position at the pharmaceutical company when administrators decided that someone involved in elder abuse was inappropriate for a medical environment. But what gave me the most satisfaction wasn't their professional ruin, but something simpler and more personal. One afternoon, for months after all the legal drama, Michael showed up at my door alone, without Christine, with a defeated expression that would have broken my heart under other circumstances. "Mom," he said when I opened the door, "can we talk?" I looked at him for a long moment, studying his haggard face, his deep dark circles, how he had aged years in just a few weeks. "No," I replied simply. "Please," he pleaded, tears beginning to roll down his cheeks. "I've lost everything. My job, my reputation, my marriage. Christine left me last week. I have nothing. Now you know how that feels," I said with absolute calm. "Now you know what it's like to lose everything because of someone who's supposed to love you. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about everything. I know I was terrible to you. I know you didn't deserve anything we did, but I'm your son. There has to be some way to fix this." For a moment, I felt the familiar temptation to comfort him, to open my arms and forgive everything as I had done so many times before. But then I remembered something I had learned during these months of freedom: forgiveness without consequences isn't love. It's cowardice. "Michael," I said, keeping the door barely ajar, "for 30 years I forgave you for every cruelty, every moment of contempt, every time you treated me as less important than anything else in your life. I forgave you because I thought that's what loving mothers do." "Exactly," he exclaimed, trying to move closer. "You're my mother. You love me." "I loved you," I corrected him. "I loved the sweet boy who used to hug me when he had nightmares. I loved the ambitious young man who promised he would someday repay everything I sacrificed for him. But that boy, that young man, they died long ago. The person standing in front of me is a stranger who chose greed over love, who chose cruelty over gratitude. Can I change?" he yelled desperately. "Can I become the son you want again?" "I don't want you to change for me," I said, beginning to close the door. "If you ever change, let it be for yourself, because you realize that the person you became is despicable. But it's no longer my responsibility to fix you. Mom, please. He put his foot in the door, preventing me from closing it completely. You can't abandon me like this. I'm your only son. No, I replied with firmness that surprised even me. You abandoned me. I'm just officially acknowledging something that happened months ago. I gently but firmly pushed his foot away and closed the door. I heard his sobs on the other side, his pleas, his promises of change that came far too late. I stood on the other side of the door for several minutes, listening to the man who had once been my reason for living completely fall apart on my porch. Part of me wanted to open it, to comfort him, to go back to being the mother who forgave everything. But a stronger part, the part that had been reborn in that basement full of evidence, the part that had learned to value herself, stood firm. Finally, I heard his footsteps walking away, the sound of a car starting, then silence. I went to the kitchen where Dorothy was waiting with a cup of hot tea and a proud smile. How do you feel? She asked. Free, I replied, taking the cup with hands that no longer trembled. For the first time in 30 years, I feel completely free. That night, as I prepared for bed in my house that no one was going to take from me anymore, I reflected on everything that had happened. I had lost my only son, but I had gained something infinitely more valuable, my dignity. At 68, I had learned that self-love isn't selfishness, it's survival. I had learned that setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's necessity. I had learned that sometimes the only way to save what's left of your soul is to cut the ties that are destroying you. I gave everything for a son who saw me as a walking ATM. But now, finally, I was going to give everything for the only person who truly deserved it, myself. And for the first time in decades, that prospect didn't scare me. It excited me. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to hear more tales of justice and redemption. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is choose ourselves.